everyone, and welcome. My name is Maria Tranquilli, and I'm a program manager at the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center. For those of you who may not know, the Nasdaq Center is a nonprofit dedicated to enabling entrepreneurs from all over the world to realize their maximum potentials and grow. We will open for live Q&A at the end of this event, so please submit your questions in the Q&A function or in the chat at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. None of what we do would be possible without all the amazing support from our sponsors. We are humbled by their contributions. During these unique times, we are curious how sentiment is among the entrepreneurs that we work with. We would like to start by taking 2 different polls to let us know how you are feeling. Launching those polls now. How are you feeling and what is keeping you up at night? Are you feeling optimistic? Are you surviving? Are you feeling fearful or anxious? What is keeping you up at night? Is it sales, finance, marketing, scaling, pivoting, your team, or surviving? We would love to know. Okay, ending that poll now and sharing the results. It looks like we have lots of optimism in the room, and sales is our #1 thought that is keeping us up at night. I think we're in a great space then for everyone to learn a little bit about that today. Thank you all so much for participating. So without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to John Jantsch, author of Duct Tape Marketing, the world's most practical small business guide. John, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, absolutely. Appreciate it. Any chance I get to talk to a group of entrepreneurs that want to learn something new is a lot of fun for me.
Wonderful. All right, handing it to you.
All right. Let me fire up my screen here quickly. I want to talk today about let's get the poll out of the way. It's still showing up for me. I want to talk quickly about the customer journey. Customer journey is one of those topics that gets a lot of play in entrepreneurial circles, and rightly so. It's an extremely important topic. And what I want to do today is hopefully expand kind of your view of what it is, but not only what it is, how to actually guide what I call the perfect customer journey. Let's talk a little bit before I get started about how marketing's changed. I've actually been doing this I've owned my own business for almost 30 years now. So certainly marketing has changed a lot. I mean, we didn't have the internet, for example. We didn't have email. We didn't have websites. We didn't have Google when I started my business and when I actually helped small businesses grow their businesses. But a few things are absolutely a reality today. I'll share a couple of statistics just to kind of put some things on the table. 61% of mobile searches are more likely to contact a local business if they have a mobile-friendly site. Now, if I was sitting around and you all were in a room, I would ask you, what does that mean? Well, it certainly means that our website sure as heck better look good and function well on mobile devices. 87% of potential customers won't consider a business with low ratings. Again, got to get those reviews, got to get those testimonials, got to be on Facebook, on Yelp, have your Google My Business and Google reviews coming in. That's just become a reality today of how people interact with and how people make decisions about businesses. A couple more. 64% of consumers say watching a marketing video on Facebook has influenced a purchase decision in the last month. So, okay, we got to be on social media. We got to have video. I mean, there's all of these digital channels. All of these things now are part of the customer journey. 92%, this is one of my favorites, 92% of consumers will visit a brand's website for the first time for reasons other than making a purchase. So what you're telling me is my website has a lot of things that it has to do. And I think that that's one of the real challenges for many people with all of these digital assets and all these digital channels. But here's the real question. I'm going to launch one more poll. This one will be really easy. I want you to consider, what's the #1 way, those of you that have businesses, you have customers today, what's the #1 way in which you acquire new business? So I lied, Olivia, I'm not being able to launch the poll. I don't know if it's because, oh, I know what it is. It's over on my other monitor. Get over here. All right, there we go. So the #1 way in which people are voting, I don't know why it wants to stay on my other monitor. I'll bring it over here.
Can you see it? It says number one is actually networking.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see it. I was going to give do you think we got everybody in? I was going to give about 15 more seconds to vote.
Oh, sorry. I stopped sharing
Oh, you did.
Yeah,
okay.
sorry.
I don't think we got very many votes in, but that's all right. Any rate, we'll skip that because I kidded Olivia, and we can close the poll now, Olivia. Okay, so I've asked this question for 15 years, and this is in this group, it wouldn't be true, but this is the results that I generally get. I mean, most small businesses get their main source of new business by way of referrals. In a lot of ways, networking is ultimately a referral game, because in a lot of cases, when you're networking with somebody, you're meeting people who actually can refer business to you. So, over the years, this is proven true. And I think for a lot of businesses, this creates a lot of confusion because ultimately we've got all these digital channels and social media, and websites have to do this, and email and reviews and some of the things that I just talked about. But in the end, a lot of times it's person to person, meeting somebody, at an event, somebody having a friend and referring. And so people are like, how do I balance all this? And I think that the thing that I want to get across today is that a lot in marketing has changed, and we have a lot of new things we have to pay attention to. But I think the thing that's changed the most in marketing, that's the most challenging for people to understand, is the way people buy. And that's the part that I think causes so referrals, while they're still incredibly important, that's the part that has changed the most. How somebody gives a referral, how somebody makes a decision about a referral. When somebody refers somebody, the first thing they do is go and do all the research they can behind the scenes online now today. And those are the elements that in a lot of ways are out of our control. So this idea of, and everybody who's studied any marketing has studied the marketing funnel, this idea of the funnel that you just get a bunch of as many people as possible up there at the top of the funnel, and then you push them down and some small percentage of them come through and become customers. I think this idea is very outdated, and quite frankly, I think is one of the real challenges of why businesses can't grow, is to focus on this idea of just getting leads, of just getting more people in the top of the funnel and converting some of them to customers. Because today, the customer journey is not this linear path. It's not about creating demand anymore. I want to suggest the customer journey looks a heck of a lot more like this. And then, as I said, so many of the ways in which people or companies make decisions about the suppliers and the products and the services they buy are really out of our control. Even if ultimately we generate most of our business by way of referral, how people come to that referral is something that we have to focus on. And so I created about 15 years ago what I think is a better way to think about the customer journey. And it's something that I call the Marketing Hourglass. So just from a shape standpoint, it certainly borrows from that idea of there's nothing wrong necessarily with the top half of that funnel. We do have to get people to know about our businesses, and then hopefully some of them have to decide that they want to buy from us. But it's what happens after that, or maybe even during that process of buying, that I think is where the real magic happens. And so what I believe is that there are 7 stages of the customer journey, and they're more about behavior than they are about what the client is doing at the time, or the customer is doing at the time. And those 7 stages are know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer. And so if you think about your own journey in coming to companies and services and products that you end up buying, obviously, if you have a problem you're trying to solve, you need to know about the companies that might be able to do that. I mean, that's a very common thing that we want to do as consumers. Certainly, as we start to consider, even if you got that referral, we start to consider those businesses. Do we like what they're saying? Do we like their story? We're probably not going to buy from anybody if there's any lack of trust. I mean, you might buy a $29 product, but you're certainly not going to engage anyone at a very high level unless there is a very significant amount of trust, that you trust that they're going to do what they promise. I don't know about you, but I love it when I can try out a company or see what it's going to actually be like to work with a company. It doesn't mean that it's a trial It might be a free trial. That's why free trials are so popular, especially in the SaaS world. But actually even having the ability to experience a company or a product or a service or a consultant, say, in an environment like this is actually a way, part of the customer journey to actually try out a company. And then, of course, we all want that buying experience to be as frictionless and as magical as all of the marketing promised. Then I think as consumers, or at least I know certainly in my own buying, if I find a company that takes care of me, that exceeds my expectations, that really does what they promise, that gets me results. I mean, I don't go out and shop for somebody the next time I need that. I just go straight to them and assume that it's going to be a great experience again. And I think we all want that ease in our lives. And then I think as human beings, we're all wired really to talk about the companies and the products and the services that exceed our expectations, that surprise us. I mean, that's why so many businesses do rely and do depend on word of mouth and referrals as such a significant driver of their business. But the idea behind this framework is that we as marketers need to design this journey. First, we need to understand it because I do believe that our best customers do go down this journey. So we have to understand that. We have to understand what their objections are. We have to understand what their questions are, what their objectives are at each stage of the journey, because they change. And then it's simply a matter of designing our marketing, our campaigns, even our product launches around guiding this journey, understanding and guiding this journey. And so most of the businesses that we work with have no problem considering this idea. It's in the actual execution that they have significant gaps. And so by doing this work of mapping this customer journey, and I'm not saying that you do it once and you figure it out and you're done, but then also considering how to evolve it, how to make it better, how to get narrower in your casting in this journey is really then the work, the ongoing work of marketing. So how do you figure out or apply this idea of the marketing hourglass? So there really are three things that you're going to do. And there's actually a form that I'm going to give you, or I've provided, and the Nasdaq folks are going to give you because it's a nice aid for going through this process. But the process eventually, or essentially, is starting in the first step with the customer action. So if you think about those 7 stages, how do your customers, and you may not know this, you may have to work on discovering this, but how do they solve their problems? How do they come to buy? So if you think about your particular company, how do people come to know about companies like yours, or come to find services and products like what you sell or what you are building? And then I'm going to walk through kind of some examples, but then essentially, we're just going to go, okay, once they find you, what is it that's going to make them like what they see? Okay, how do we build trust? What's the try experience need to be for them? So we put all of the emphasis originally on what the customer does, what we think their journey is, because then essentially it's not that hard to then say, okay, if what everybody in our space does when they need to find XYZ is they turn to a search engine and put in a search, well, it's pretty good chance that we then better figure out how to do this SEO thing. We need to show up and be there in the places where they are searching, and for the things they are searching for and the problems they're trying to solve in their initial searches. It just becomes then a part of the roadmap. And frankly, the know part is the easiest part for most people. I mean, most people can identify how people search, where they find their answers. It's everything after that that gets a little harder. But that's really our first step, is to do this mapping. And then in a lot of cases, what we'll do is we'll say, okay, we are doing this, or we're not doing that one. So here's a gap. I mean, here are essentially the projects, campaigns, processes that we need to put on the roadmap for marketing for the next quarter, the next year, whatever it is. So the form that I mentioned is just this, and it really is just a brainstorming form in a lot of ways. And as I said, the folks at Nasdaq are going to make this available to you if you feel that it has some value. But we would sit around in a room in a lot of cases, or, have a whiteboard, or of course, today it's this kind of format, and we would just simply kind of go through the stages. So what we would do is say, okay, no, I'm going to give you an example. This is actually a company that sells, actually they do outsourced accounting, and then they do actually sell a software product for the nonprofit world. And so this top half is simply saying, okay, how do people find a business like yours? Not just you, but somebody, your competitors too. How do they find you? Well, they turn to search engines. There are journals in our industry, in the nonprofit world, that people read. People attend conferences. They certainly do a lot of networking. They get recommendations from board members, and they respond to ads to solve the accounting or to solve the software issue that they have. Okay, if that's the case, then what do we need to do? Well, we certainly need to make sure that we are focused on search engine optimization. We need to produce educational content. We need to look for some of these journals. Let's identify them and start looking at ways that we might be able to contribute content. We need to actually have a better referral process. We clearly need to think about the conferences that would get us in front of folks. What's our advertising look like? What's our social media networking look like? So this is just brainstorming. So this is just kind of a dump of, okay, if this is how we think that that executive director at a nonprofit agency, in this case, finds their information, then these are all the things that we need to do. Now, in some cases, we might actually say, okay, we're doing 3 of them, but we definitely need to put these 3 on the roadmap for projects in the future. So that's essentially the process. And I'll go fairly quickly through the other stages, just so you get a sense of kind of what I'm talking about here. The like stage for a lot of people is like, well, I don't understand what that means. But here, all we're doing is it's that first impression in a lot of cases. So they go ask a friend, know anybody who does this? They say, oh yeah, you need to call such and such software company. Well, what is somebody going to do then in that instance? Well, they're going to go to the website. They might visit it on a mobile device. They might bookmark something. They might look for some content that they could download. Now's the place where they might actually say, okay, let's click over and look at your Facebook page. Maybe they're now also, building a consideration map where they're thinking, okay, I've been told there are 3 companies that I should talk to. So now they're starting to make kind of like the pros and cons. So for this particular stage, this is where we would look at and say, okay, if that's probably the next likely step in their journey, then we better make sure that we have a website that promises to solve their problem, gets their attention immediately. We better have useful content. We certainly better make sure that our social media is up to date. Believe it or not, our websites need to load fast. The call to action on our forums need to work right. I mean, these are all kind of that first impression stuff. Am I finding, what I'm looking for quickly? Because we're not going there to make a purchase. Remember those 82% of people that don't go to a website the first time to make a purchase? That's what's happening here. It's the first impression. It's, do you even get on the short list kind of consideration? So from that, we would look at it and say, okay, here's where we have gaps. This one, to me, is, I hate to have a favorite of the 7 stages, and maybe this isn't necessarily my favorite, but I believe fully that this is the most important stage. And this is the one that a lot of people miss, because we try to go from, hey, you came to my website, buy this, call me, schedule a free evaluation, take a free trial. Even those steps today require a significant amount of trust being built. And trust comes when somebody revisits your website. Maybe they found you, somebody referred you. Now they're going to look at, okay, what are other people saying about this particular business? I'm going to do a deep search in Google or a search engine just to see if anybody's, if there's anything out there that I'm missing that's bad or good or otherwise. I'm going to look for case studies. I'm going to look for signs that this person is a thought leader, that this business, other people believe, and they can prove that they've gotten these results for other people. So again, if that's how people are going to make that's the step or the place where they are in this particular part of the journey. Clearly, reviews are important. Case studies are going to be important. Trust signals like testimonials are going to be important. Video is a tremendous way to build trust. Having lots of information about the people that are going to be working with a prospective client, your PR, your community involvement. These are all things that we have to then put on the roadmap for building trust, intentionally there to build trust. You may think, well, SEO is to get a click, or to have somebody find us, which is right. But SEO, the secondary value of SEO is that if you do a search for something you're looking for, if you do a search to try to solve a problem or to ask a question, don't you give a fair amount of trust, whether it's deserved or not? Don't we all give a fair amount of trust to those websites that are showing up on page one? I mean, we obviously are just trying to find our answer, but I think that there is a level of trust afforded to the fact that apparently Google must think this is a good website, this is a good business, this is good content, or it wouldn't show up on page one. Trust signals, as I said, like testimonials. All right, the try stage, again, in some cases is harder for people to understand because they think of try as like, I get to try out your product. But that's not always the case. In a lot of ways with businesses, if I'm thinking about hiring this software company, a lot of times I'm going to pick up the call, I'm going to pick up the phone and want to call somebody. I'm going to attend a webinar. I'm going to visit them at a conference booth. I'm going to maybe call up their references or call up even some of their testimonial folks. And in a lot of ways, that is reaching the level of try. For a lot of businesses, we do consulting work with businesses in pretty much every industry. But we do have a lot of clients that are in the home services businesses, like HVAC contractors and remodeling contractors. And I have to tell you, they get disqualified, 9 times out of 10, if the business is really struggling, it's because whoever answers the phone is not doing a very good job. And so in a lot of ways, that's how we're first, experiencing a company, trying a company. So that's a really important element. So again, we can go down a rabbit hole here, but that's one of the things that in this customer journey we look at and fix because it has such a significant impact on the customer wanting to go to those next phases. In this particular company, remember we're talking about this software company. They have a free evaluation. They actually do peer-to-peer sessions where customers of theirs will actually hold a peer discussion panel group to talk about issues that they've been able to solve by using this software. So there's so many versions of a try that I think I spend a lot of time with businesses helping kind of expand their view. But this is, in a lot of ways, trust and try, are very, very related. But this is something that has to be planned. Just, the typical, this is an SEO company and the kind of the typical call to action right there is a try that happens every single day. All right, so buy, the buying journey for somebody who's actually come to the part where it's like, okay, we're ready to go with you. We're going to request a proposal. We might negotiate the purchase. In some cases, we have to secure funding. Again, remember, this is a software company. They, part of the buying process is migrating from what it is they were doing before. So what do we as the business have to be doing then? Well, we better look at what's our proposal process even look like? How do we communicate expectations of what's next? What's our onboarding process? What's the transition phase? What's the new customer kit? So these are all elements that, a lot of times this is where marketing has already stepped out. It's like, service provider, whoever does, the work, this is on you. But this is absolutely still part of not only the customer journey, but certainly a part of the marketing experience and delivery of the brand promise that's going on. And this is where we find the biggest gaps. A lot of times those other phases stages we were just talking about, they involve advertising and they involve elements of a website and they involve email marketing. Well, here we're pretty much down to process in a lot of cases or lack thereof, but this is still performing a marketing function. All right, repeat. Of course, we want to have that repeat business, the retention business. That certainly makes life a heck of a lot easier if you're not just having to go out there and get new business every single day. So what is somebody doing to decide if they're going to stay with you? Well, we're going to measure in this case with my software company, we're going to measure the ease of access, the use. We're going to assess how the communication went, how the reporting went. I mean, did we get the problem solved? In this case, a lot of the way that they're going to assess success is the board comfortable now with what we're able to do because we made this transition? So there again, we're getting into process. What's the reporting process look like? There's a couple things that we implemented for them. A firefighting process that had a very specific way to address it. 90 days, we actually put their clients into a specific training. Once they signed up, they put them in the 90 days to success program that was ongoing training that had to be developed, but it made retention so much more successful. And any of you that sell software, I mean, especially if you try that free evaluation of a software, a free trial period, you know that the faster you can get the customer using it and being successful using it, the more likely it is they're going to stay and pay. So this is this particular piece of it is a very set part of the journey. And then lastly, people make referrals really for only two reasons. I mean, a peer asks them, do you know anybody who does what or can solve this problem? Or you as the company ask. And I will say that all of my work and research with many, many businesses over the years, very few, even though all these companies get referrals, very few have a process to ask for it or to amplify their referability. It's just kind of the accidental referral. So in this particular case, what we did with the software company is we started creating champion events, things where we could bring their best customers together. We could do it online or in person, just even routinely asking for referrals, starting to come up and build a formal strategic partner network, their community involvement. I mean, these are all things that helped amplify the fact that they were very referable. So in the end, and this just becomes a jumbled mess, but in the end, we go through and it's know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer. This becomes kind of the roadmap for how we're going to move forward for where we think the buyer goes to make their decisions, but more importantly, what do we need to build? What campaigns, what processes, where do we have gaps so that we can make sure that we're guiding this customer journey in the way that our ideal customer, our ideal client wants to travel. And I think that one of the things that gets lost in this sometimes is that a lot of the emphasis is on what do we need to do to be there where they are. But I'll tell you the other thing that this process does is if you can map out the journey for what is your ideal client, this process of guiding them through know, like, trust, try, buy, as opposed to just know and buy is going to actually attract more ideal clients. They're going to be more educated. They're going to understand the value that you bring. And what we've experienced is that they're going to be willing to pay a premium for working with you or acquiring your services or your products because of the way that you have moved them and guided them and answered their questions and objections and helped them achieve their goals along the journey. So that was a very quick explanation of I think a significant framework that you can use in marketing. And I will say, we go in and we build this as part of a strategy with every business that we work with, but then we've also used it for product launches because again, if we're going to come out with a new product or a line extension, or we're going to go into a new market, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to map out this journey that would help us, understand what this new market or what this new product, what that journey is going to look like, and we'll use it as part of an overarching campaign for a very specific product. We've also used this framework internally. I've actually worked with some software companies that were having a lot of trouble. They get a customer. That customer would buy the product because purchasing or the HR people or whoever said we're going to all use this now, and then they had very little success getting uptake or getting people inside the organization to use it. They all just kind of, it was too hard. They really didn't understand why they were doing it anyway. And so we actually designed for this software company a process that they could use to actually get early adopters, to understand, what it is, why this is going to be more valuable. So it's a whole education process internally to get employees on board with this new process, actually this new software, as part of what a customer would actually deliver to their customers. So this is a very flexible framework that we've been able to apply in a lot of ways, but it's certainly a tremendous framework to think at the highest level about strategy inside a business overarching. So Maria, that's all I had to from a presentation standpoint. So I know we were going to take some questions today.
Absolutely, John. Well, thank you so much for that incredible and succinct overview. Amazing. We do have quite a few questions, and right before we get into Q&A, I just would love to address everyone to say thank you for being on with us today. John is such an expert in this area and in marketing, so any and all questions that you have, we would love to answer them. Please put them in the chat and or in the Q&A box. We are happy to share those with John. And also, if you're brave enough and you'd like to share your voice, raise your hand in the participant section, and you'll be able to ask your question directly to John, which is also really fun. So, John, are you ready for some questions right now?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Pat, who is in the audience, has a very specific question. Can you speak further on the trust section again?
Sure. So again, that one's a little harder to define because for a lot of people, that's part of the decision-making process. It's almost a feeling sometimes, right? You go to a website and there's something that's off. You can't even define it necessarily, but you mark them down in the trust category, whether you consciously know you're doing that or not. So a lot of ways that if somebody's just finding you, they've never heard of you, they've never heard of your business, or I'll flip it around. If you've come to a website because you did a search and you went there and you started thinking, who are these people? Do you start to put, even subconsciously, some stock in the fact that, they've written for Fast Company, they've written for Entrepreneur Magazine. In my town, I know these 5 companies that are clients of theirs. I mean, those are ways that we start the trust element. Is there a video on the website from the owner of the business saying, this is what we believe, this is why we built this company, this is our entire purpose of our business? Those are all things that we need to consider as part of the journey. The website homepage today has become a significant amplifier, I think, of the customer journey because, and it's why really those long scrolling homepages are so popular today, because we are going to a website, as I already talked about, not necessarily to buy something, because we're doing research, because we are maybe trying to find a solution. And so what we're doing today is we're going there and we're just kind of subconsciously saying, I like this, the site functions well, it loaded fast, there are reasons to believe that I can trust this company, I like what they have to say. And so we're kind of we have this internal checklist where we're making decisions, and all of those elements, including ones that amplify or build a trust. All the ways that you would think, is this a trustworthy company, based on the fact that you've never heard of them before, you don't know them, what are going to be the things that you're going to maybe put into, that process or that decision of, do I even want to call these people? Nobody wants to call anybody anymore. Nobody wants a salesperson certainly to come to their place, right? So we're not going to take that step unless we trust that it's going to be worth our time and it's going to be a good experience. So how are all the ways that you can amplify your trust to somebody that, without saying trust us, because that doesn't work. So what are all the ways that you can amplify that by things that might actually demonstrate, okay, other people trust them, maybe I can too.
John, what a great answer. And Pat, let us know if you have a follow-up to that answer. Thank you so much, John. All right, we have some great questions rolling in. We have a question from Antonella. How do you use this to get customer insight into understanding what they might want?
So ahead of this process in many cases. I mean, this is something we'll do as part of a strategic engagement. But the other thing that we will do is that we will interview 8 to 10 of their customers. And that actually goes into this decision. I mean, we won't necessarily ask them, how they make decisions, because a lot of times they don't know, but we will ask them, how did you find this company? Why do you buy from them? Why do you stay with them? What do they do that others don't? So that line of questioning, and it's not scientific research. I mean, we're looking for themes and emotions that come out repeatedly in those interviews. And to me, that's a process that, I encourage businesses to do at least a little bit of on say a quarterly basis, because it will help you understand not necessarily the exact way to guide the customer journey, but it will maybe help you understand the problems that people are trying to solve. And that's a big part. I could do an entire webinar just on that idea of a core message that attracts your ideal client. Needs to be a promise to solve a problem. And in a lot of cases, that's what we find in doing that customer research is the problem that your business really solves for them. And it's not, buying your product is not solve a problem. It's what your product or service does. I'll give you an example. In our world, nobody ever wakes up and says, my problem is I don't have a marketing consultant. They wake up and they say, why does my competitor always rank ahead of me in the search engines? Or why is every time a prospective customer call, are they trying to get a better price or just want to know, the price? So, well, those are problems that can be addressed with strategy. Those are problems that can be addressed with search engine optimization. But nobody wants to actually buy those things. They want their problem solved. And I know that sounds pretty logical, but go look at 10 websites today and see if any of them are talking about solving a problem. They're talking about the business. They're talking about what the business does. And that's a great opportunity for you.
Well, that's fantastic, John. So actually, I think we have a follow-up to that original question. Do you have any methods that you might recommend to understand what your customers are looking for? Is it interviews? Are they surveys? What might you recommend?
Yeah, so I think I kind of answered that in that last answer, but that is definitely what we do. We have 2 processes we lean on very heavily. One is the interviews, and I kind of glossed over those questions, but we'll ask like, what do you do? What do we do that that other people don't? And a lot of times if you got a happy customer, they'll say, well, you provide better service. So you have to push that a little bit because that's not very helpful. Everybody says they provide great service. So tell me a time when we provided great service. What does great service look like to you? Get your customers to tell stories about things, and you're going to start hearing the words, frankly, and the emotions that ought to be part of your website. I'll tell you, if you want to experience this yourself, you can actually do it today. Go out and find, if you happen to have a high number of Google reviews of hopefully 4 and 5 star Google reviews. Do the same thing with those. Go through and read them word for word. What are some of the themes? What are some of the actual words and phrases that come up repeatedly in those Google reviews? And if you don't personally have a lot of those yourself, look at some competitors. Look at any industry that has a lot of Google reviews, and you'll get a pretty good idea of the simple things that people value the most, because you think about it, it's not the easiest thing in the world to leave a Google review. If somebody voluntarily does it, especially somebody who's not, on a computer every day like a lot of us, somebody who voluntarily goes to Google, figures out how to leave a review, and then writes, 50, 100 words about the experience they had, you better pay close attention to the words they're using, because that's your ideal customer. They had a great experience. And they're using the words in their own terms of what they think is valuable that you do. And 9 times out of 10, it's not what you think it is.
I love that, John. Thank you so much for sharing. So we'll move into another question. We'll stay on the topic of trust. From Shalini, can trust break easily? And how do you maintain trust and or recover from a setback?
Yeah. So trust, a lot of people have said this, but I think it's a great analogy. It's like a bank account. A lot of cases you can't make withdrawals until you make some deposits. And so for a lot of people, trust, you think about people you have close relationships. They let you down. It's like, wow, that was weird, but it didn't like ruin the relationship because you trusted them. You had experienced them for a long time and experienced trust from them in a long time. So it was a ding, but it didn't break the relationship. But if you think about somebody you've met for the first time or know that well, obviously it's easy to break down. So if you think about businesses, how have you been able to perform and give results, over some period of time is going to dictate maybe how quickly trust is going to be broken. But the second part of your question, I think, is very much has to do with how you respond. So if there was a situation, and I'll go back to my Google reviews all the time. You see this. Somebody leaves a 1-star review because they had something happened. They had a terrible experience. Now we all know that there are people that just want to be unhappy. They just want to leave 1-star reviews. We'll never make them happy. So it could be one of those. But there's also legitimate times when somebody didn't get what they were promised or there was a miscommunication. So how you respond even to that review may have a lot to do with how you recover that relationship. But I'll also tell you this, that when you're responding, and you should respond to every review, positive or negative. But when you're responding to those reviews, yes, you are talking to that one person, but you're doing it in a public forum. And so how you reply, how you respond is going to send a tremendous trust signal, either negative or positive, to the rest of the world as well.
John, thank you so much. We actually did have another question about how do you deal with bad reviews to regain customer trust? So I think you've just acknowledged that.
Yeah, and it's so tempting because you think, well, I know who this person is and they were unreasonable and I want to tell the world how unreasonable they were. But, not everybody else knows what really went on. And so what they're going to read is your snarky, comments, right? And so just think of it. You may not be able to recover that one. I mean, if you made a mistake, admit it. Try to say, look, call us, we'll make it right. That I think is long-term is the right thing to do, but certainly responding in a way that tells the rest of the world that, you keep your promises, that, you're human like everyone else. I think it's why there's all kinds of research that suggests that, in Google reviews, your aggregate score, the highest you can be, is 5. There's all kinds of research that says 4.6 is the most believable because everybody, you've probably done that. You look at some book, it's got 147 5-star reviews, and you're thinking, nobody, had anything negative to say about this. So we in some cases, how people respond to those reviews is more important than the fact that you got the bad reviews. Now, having said that, if you've got 3 bad reviews and 3 good reviews, obviously you've got an issue. So, play offense too. Get lots of reviews from those happy customers because unfortunate feature of human nature is that people who are angry will, crawl over broken glass to leave a review, and people that are mostly happy, have to actually be encouraged.
Such tactical advice. Thank you, John. Great. So we have a question about try strategies. Mm-hmm. Can you share any creative try strategies that you have used that may not necessarily need to be free?
Sure. So we actually, I'll tell you one very specific that we do because free scales, right? I mean, a lot of people take free stuff, and unfortunately, in some cases, the people most willing to take free stuff are not very qualified to be a customer. And so, the point of the try phase is to get them to be a customer, right? So I believe every business, particularly any business that offers a service, should have some sort of paid evaluation, paid, audit, paid way for somebody to get a whole lot of value, but to pay a little money for it. So in our particular business, we offer something called, we do ongoing, like long-term marketing, implementation, strategy and implementation for, clients through our agency. But we also offer something called a total online presence audit because we know so many people are confused about what's going on their online presence. They've got 3 vendors working on 3 different things on it. And so we have this very great way to look under the hood and tell them exactly what's going on with their search traffic, their optimization, their content, their reviews, their social platforms, even a competitive analysis for $500 to $700. And what that does is it does a couple of things. First off, it attracts people who are willing to invest a little bit of money. So we know they're serious. We know they're going to show up, to get their results delivered. But it also allows us as a business to know they're serious and to go very deep and to over deliver in that, because we know it's going to turn into a 50, 70, who knows, $100,000 engagement. And so we can actually tailor our conversations now to their exact needs. We're not just talking in generalities about websites and content and SEO. We're talking about their website and their content and their SEO and telling them how to make it better. You don't have to hire us to do it, but you're going to get a lot of value out of this. So I think every business, I call it actually paid lead conversion, because in a lot of ways that's what it is. They are paying us a little bit of money so that we can do a better job of turning them into a bigger client. And that idea of pay a little something, once somebody's given you a little bit of money and gotten value, they're a lot more willing to talk about the big picture and the long-term engagement.
Thank you, John. Oh my gosh, we have so many great questions coming in. Thank you all so much for asking all of these. We'll make sure to get to as many as possible. We have about 11 minutes left with John, so please continue to submit your questions. And Olivia from Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center has just put a link to a survey in the chat. So as you're listening, please take 2 to 3 minutes to fill out the survey so John knows exactly what you loved about this webinar, and Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center also knows what you would like to hear about in the future. So John, we have some additional questions here. This is a great one from an early stage company. What is your advice to a new business that may not have much user interaction or testimonials to work with yet?
So that's always a tough one. You feel like you're guessing, right? So what I always tell people is it's really important that you go out and start engaging people that you think will be users. Find a way to get some amount of people involved in your early stage, in your development. Obviously all the startup books talk about customer discovery and things like that. I think that, finding groups of people and maybe incentivizing them in some fashion to give you feedback, to be obviously, the whole concept of beta users. That can apply no matter what your business does. So, that you just have to really kind of do it. It's go out there and find folks. The worst thing you can do, as many people have advised, is to, get your whatever it is you're building completely built and then go out there and see if anybody wants it. So, get that, force that feedback from people that maybe aren't users, find a way to engage, groups or, strategic partners. That's one I love, is if there's another business that already has what you think is your user base. Is there a way that you can work with them, give them some incentive to help you collect this data?
Very insightful, John. Thank you. Okay, let's see. We have from Nuno, what is the difference between referral and word of mouth?
Well, they're certainly very related. I think the difference probably comes in the actions. A lot of times word of mouth is, Maria, I just went to this great restaurant last night. You ought to try it out. That's word of mouth. But the difference might be if Maria came to me and said, do you know any good restaurants? And I'd say, yeah, you know what? A good friend of mine has this restaurant and they just opened, blah, blah, blah. That's more of an active referral. Obviously you can think of other instances where people online, have gone out there and written a review, say about a piece of software, about a service, or about a company. That one skirts being, both. This, in some ways, somebody reads that, it's kind of word of mouth, but there's an active link to say, hey, I use this, you should try this out as well. Maybe that person's incentivized actually to share that as an affiliate or something. So that becomes, to where that idea of what's the difference between word of mouth and referral, gets very merged. But I think the biggest, simplest way to define it is that a referral is much more active. You should do this, or here's somebody who can help you solve your problem.
Perfect, John. So we have a very specific question from Amy. We have a lifestyle product that people don't know they are looking for until they find us.
Yeah.
I feel like that's such a common
Yeah.
thought
Yeah.
among entrepreneurs, right?
We're solving a problem that nobody knows they have.
Exactly. So we haven't yet cracked the SEO around what people are looking for when they find us. Any tips for honing in on SEO that matches what potential customers are using as search terms?
Okay. So, while that was very specific, there's still a little vagueness in that I don't know exactly what the product is, but that's not necessary. The biggest advice I can give you, and this is hard to sometimes wrap your heads around, is how could you get involved in a customer journey at an earlier point? So in other words, what a lot of people do is they create a product and they say, this problem solves this problem. And as Amy just said, well, people aren't looking for that. Well, what are they looking for prior to that? Or what problem generically are they talking about, trying to solve in their lives? That is even tangentially, related. Because a lot of times until we can talk about our customers' problems and problems they don't even know they have, then, we've got to do that first before we can connect that to our product or service being the solution. So what happens earlier in the journey that you could somehow get involved in so that they come to know you for the things they are searching for? And as I said, it might just be related to your product or service, and you could write a guide, or a website guide on solving that problem, and that's going to help you attract folks. That's very general. It's a very specific approach and methodology that we use all the time. It's very general because I don't know exactly what, I can't give you the exact advice of what that is, but other than the methodology for doing it.
Thank you, John. And Amy, feel free to give us a follow-up question in the chat if that's helpful. If you need some further clarification, no problem. Let's see. So we have another question from Nuno. So Nuno has recorded visitor, he has some visitor video recording reviews, and he's curious about how he can use those within a sales funnel on his website. What might be your recommendations for a great experience for his customers?
Video reviews of his product, I guess is what he's saying. Yeah. Okay. We'll definitely have, here's what I would do with those. I would have a page, for here's what our customers say about us, a specific page that would probably be in the main navigation. But then I would also sprinkle those around other pages on your website because a lot of times, a great example is a lot of times people come into websites because they do a search and they come into a blog post, or for example, excuse me. And so they're not going to necessarily click around and see all that other stuff. But video testimonials are a very strong form of content. Video in general, very strong form of content. So I would sprinkle those through a lot of different pages. I would also, if you have some sort of lead capture device, like an ebook or a checklist, or some reason they might give you their email address, I would also think in terms of a long-term kind of nurturing email series that you would maybe sprinkle. And again, the idea behind that is somebody comes to your website, they see a good piece of content they want, but they're not ready to buy. You capture their email address, and then you send them a series of 10 emails over, say 2 or 3 months. Use those videos inside of those emails, not necessarily like one every day, but every third one, every fifth one or something, sprinkle in those emails because they're great content.
That's a great strategy, John. Thank you for sharing. So we have a question about the customer journey, and has it changed considering we are all online with stay-at-home orders in the pandemic? Have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's changed over the last decade dramatically, frankly, because more and more people are doing what they're doing online. Certainly in the last 6 months, it has changed dramatically, but in some ways it hasn't. We're just, maybe the sales cycle is a little slower. We're not getting on a plane and going and making that follow-up sales call anymore. But in terms of the behaviors, I don't think the behaviors have changed. We still have to find ways to connect. We have to find ways to build trust. We have to have process maybe that makes it easier or contactless now to buy our products and services. So all of those things are certainly part of it. But I think what people are trying to accomplish hasn't changed. It's just the way that we deliver it.
Oh, very well said, John. Absolutely. So I think we have time for one final question. One of the most common approaches to marketing seems to be keeping the customer engaged once they are on board for as long as possible. But let's say a service has a time duration. Is it important to continue to keep those customers engaged?
Well, I think for the long-term game, I would say yes. Those customers are always going to be, assuming they had a great experience, are always going to be a referral source. Now, maybe you start talking to them in a different way. Maybe you design a follow-up series that is, more global in nature rather than talking about, your product or service all the time. But I think staying in contact with past customers is always a good practice. And in fact, when we come in to many businesses that have a situation like that, a lot of times we'll just come up with once a quarter some sort of campaign to reach out to those people and give them an incentive or give them a reason to refer us and to recommend us. And that, never underestimate, the power of, the fact that somebody already trusts you and had a great experience with you, the value to continue to market to them. Now that's sort of the short answer, but also, what if you decide one day you want to sell something else to them? I would certainly want to have them thinking highly of you, even if they haven't bought anything from you for a couple of years.
Oh, what fantastic final words of wisdom to share with our group here, John. Thank you so much. So I want to thank everyone that's here for hearing what John has had to say, all of his expertise. Please take a moment or 3 minutes to fill out our survey so John can know exactly what you loved about this webinar, and so Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center can produce additional events just like this one. And John, from us at Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center, and on behalf of everyone in attendance today, we're so grateful that you've joined us. You have absolutely helped develop our community, shared your insights, and set an excellent overview. Thank you for being on our platform today.
You bet. My pleasure. Always love it.
Wonderful. So for everyone still in attendance, we would again love to hear from you. Please take a moment to fill out the survey. And if you are interested, next Wednesday, we have an upcoming webinar, Unfiltered Lessons with Victoria Montgomery Brown. She's an incredible CEO. And also next Thursday, a step-by-step workshop on contact marketing. We would love to have you there. Please join us. And for everyone still watching, have a lovely, lovely day. Thank you.